Good evening and welcome to Prog Monster. My name is Murph. I am the host of this show. This is a show that is dedicated to progressive rock and other forms of rock music. So we're back with my favorite albums from the year 1975. This is day 10, or February the 10th. The band we're in question today is AC/DC. This is the second album from their discography, entitled T.N.T., released on December 1st, 1975. Only in Australia, though. This album was not released outside of Australia. It's on the Albert Studio, which is in Sydney. 42 minutes in length, and is on the Albert label as well. Harry Bonda and George Young were the producers of the album. George Young being the older brother of both Malcolm and Angus Young, members of the band. So this album, basically this album and the first album, which was titled High Voltage, not the High Voltage that we get in the International High Voltage, the original first album. Both came out the same year. I chose this one because this one actually is the beginning of that definitive AC/DC sound. Yeah, there was some of it on the first album, but they were experimenting with different sounds as well. But this one definitely is a definitive AC/DC sound on this album. And they actually took this album and the first album, combined songs from both to release the International High Voltage album, which came out, I believe, the next year, if I'm not wrong. I might be wrong, but I don't think I am. Okay, so let me get to the personnel first. So appearing on this album, of course, Bon Scott, Angus Young, and Malcolm Young. And two newcomers, Phil Rudd and Mark Evans, joined them. And basically, Bon Scott is vocals. He does play bagpipes on It's a Long Way to the Top. Angus Young, lead guitar. Malcolm Young, rhythm guitar. Phil Rudd, drums and percussion. Actually, yeah, drums and percussion. And Mark Evans on the bass guitar. So Phil Rudd and Mark Evans play all the tracks except for the last two, which are have George Young on bass and Tony Current on drums. So basically that is this also marks the beginning of AC/DC solidifying their band lineup and not having so many outside musicians come aboard. They had a lot of that on their first album. So anyways, I like this album quite a bit, obviously, because it's made my list. I just want to go through the track listing. So there are basically 9 tracks on this album, most of which end up on High Voltage when they do an international release, but still a lot of really good stuff in here. The Long Way to the Top, if you want to rock and roll. This to me is probably the best AC/DC song prior to Bon Scott's death. Sorry, I was trying to think of how I wanted to say that. So from the Bon Scott era, then, if you prefer, I like this song, probably the best. It's certainly up there with in their top 5 for me. It's such a great, iconic song, and I think in a lot of ways, people who like that Bon Scott era kind of view this song as the signature song for the band. And you know what, to be honest with you, I think even after he died and Brian Johnson came into the band and they went on to some pretty serious heights in rock and roll music, I still think that a lot of AC/DC fans view this as the signature song. I certainly think of it as that way. So anyways, it's a great track. The pipes really add a different sound to it, but overall it's a pretty hard rockin' song. It's very catchy. I like it a lot. Rock and Roll Singer, pretty decent song for the album. Not one of my favorite tracks on the album, but I do like it. The Jack, of course, I think is a classic AC/DC song. One of those songs that really cemented the band for me as as becoming one of my favorite bands. Yes, I did come aboard during Back in Black, and I listened to that album, and that was and still is my favorite album by them. However, I prefer the Bon Scott era. I actually don't think I went forward on any of the AC/DC stuff. I have listened to various parts of the albums that come after Back in Black, but I never went really too forward. I was always backwards to this stuff because I just think it's that much better. So the Jack was one of those songs. And so then another song, the next song, Live Wire, is really solid track. It's a track that I discovered when I bought the High Voltage album, the international version. I like this track a lot. It's actually become one of my favorite ones to listen to. The next song, T.N.T., of course, was a hit here in North America when the High Voltage album eventually came on. But this is the title track of this particular album, T.N.T. Great track. So that first side of their second album, no really weak songs on there at all. Really great track. Side 2, Rocker, that's okay. Can I sit next to you? Can I sit next to you, girl? I don't mind this song. Sorry, but I'll be honest, I find it a bit creepy. It's just something about the way that he does it, the way he portrays it is kind of creepy. I don't know if he was intending on that or he was just tongue-in-cheek doing this, but I just find it a creepy song for some reason. Then, of course, High Voltage, which is on this album and not on the High Voltage album, or at least the original one. Lots of bands have done this. Led Zeppelin did this. A few other bands have done this, but this is a great track too. Another A tune, another top shelf tune. So there's like 5 or 6 really top shelf tunes here. It's a long way to the top if you rock and roll. The Jack, Live Wire, T.N.T, High Voltage. These are all top tracks for me on this album. Top shelf tracks, sorry. And then you have the Chuck Berry sang cover of School Days, which is actually done really well. I really think Bon Scott really knows how to handle the vocal parts very well on this. So there you have it. That is the High Voltage album. I'm sorry, the T.N.T album from 1975. Really good album. I think it belongs on my list. It's coming in at number 10. Could be a little bit higher if it had the mix of the couple tracks on the other album I like with it, and was the High Voltage album. It probably would come a lot higher, but as it is, it's still a pretty strong album, and for me, the definitive opening salvo for what I believe is now maybe the biggest rock band in the world. As it stands right now in 2023, I think these guys are at the top of the heap. Anybody going to go on tour with them is going to be opening. I don't care if it's even the Stones. That's just my opinion. I just think they're the biggest band in the world, the biggest rock band in the world right now, for certain. And now they've got back some of their members that were out of the band for a bit. Cliff Williams, Phil Rudd, and now they've added Stevie Young, and actually he's been with the band for a bit, but I think the band is set. No more Axl Rhodes, please. Brian Johnson should be back where he belongs, in the saddle, and I think this will be great for AC/DC. So anyways, today's album, T.N.T. from AC/DC, Day 10. I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, please like and subscribe. It's much appreciated. This will come out in the morning, so please enjoy the video when you get a chance to see it. Have a good one. Goodbye.